Hello and welcome to another episode of #FridaySews. I did manage to get a couple of things done this week in spite of being super busy. So if you're interested in what I've done this week and what I plan to do in the coming weeks in my sewing closet, then stay tuned. All right, well, first of all, before I get started, I want to mention Jen at Today in Jen's Sewing Room, who created this hashtag Friday Sews a couple of years ago to bring the sewing community together. And I just discovered it a couple of months ago, and it has really been very helpful for me, not only to get motivated to get things done, but I have learned a lot from the fellow sewists who participate in this hashtag. So if you haven't checked out Jen's channel, please be sure to do that, and her channel will be linked in the description below. And be sure to search #FridaySews or click on the highlighted hashtag, and it will take you to lots of videos of other sewists and their creations. You won't regret it, and you might learn something new, and you might get motivated like I did to get some sewing projects done. All right, so one of the things that I did get done this week was, I mentioned the jean project from my first episode, and I was really tired of touching the jeans, but I wanted to get that dog kennel crate cover finished. One thing is our family is probably going to be moving. I have mentioned that before, but my husband has interviewed for a couple different jobs in the Midwest, and it seems quite likely that we will be moving. So I have been doing a lot of sorting and organizing, and I think I said I put a blanket over our kennel like 7 years ago when we first got the dog, and it's been there ever since. And I've had on my things to do list, make a kennel cover, that don't look like a ragged blanket. So anyway, I did throw that together with those scrap jeans that I had in my stash. So I'll show you a photo here. And as you can see, I didn't do like a bang-up professional job. I wasn't trying to, but I was generally pleased with how it turned out. I didn't quite complete it because I left some extra material on the front cover because I thought I might like to put ties or snaps at the top and at the bottom where the door opens. So I may get around to doing that. I'm going to have to go to the craft store and pick up some snaps. I could make ties, but I know practically I wouldn't really use those. I'd be more prone to use snaps or Velcro, something that's very quick. So anyway, I was pleased to get that finished. So the only other thing that I did this week was I showed you the Simplicity 8595 and my beautiful blue knit material, double brushed cotton poly that is beautiful and delightful. I want to make the maxi dress with the peekaboo or cold shoulder sleeves. But I wanted to make a working wearable toile first. So this is one of the things that I have learned from #FridaySews that I had never had given any consideration to before, which is kind of silly. But to, instead of cutting your expensive material and making a mistake, make the garment first out of something inexpensive. So because the dress that I want is to be made out of stretch knit, and that can be a little tricky, especially if, like me, I don't have a lot of experience sewing knits. So I thought, well, I'll go to Goodwill and I will look for a jersey sheet that's stretchable, pay a couple of dollars for it, then I can cut this dress out. Well, Goodwill was wiped out. So even another lady who came up to look for sheets while I was there, she's like, what happened? Where's all the sheets? So I found a single flat cotton poly sheet, and I am wearing it in brown, refugee camp brown, I call it, or women's prison brown. That's what I've been calling it all week while I have been working on it. And actually, the children, again, they're like, oh, Mom, it's so pretty. So I have it on, and I made a video of me, modeling it so that you can see the full length of it. But before I show you that, I just want to talk about a little bit. Of course, when you make your toile out of woven cotton, it doesn't stretch. So that part is not helpful. But what is helpful is, one, getting the fitting right if you need to make any adjustments. My microphone is, making it kind of sag down. But what I discovered is that the top of the dress is really too big for me. I followed the size L large, and that is bust 40-42, and I am right at 40, but really more like 39. Waist 32-34, well, I'm right in the middle there at 33, and then hips 42-44, and I'm in the middle there, 43. So what I need to do when I cut my garment is actually to grade it. I'm going to cut the top part the medium size and down to the waist, and then grade it back to the large, and I think that the knit will fit me just fine. So the cold shoulder here, when I first tried it on, they were gaping. And part of that is probably because it's cotton, but the other thing, it was too big. So I just took that in a little bit to tighten that up, and I'm pleased, enough with it. And so again, I think grading it down to the medium size will take care of that problem. Another problem is when you sew a garment in cotton woven that is supposed to be sewn in a stretchable knit, you might not be able to get it over your head. So what I did was installed a zipper in the side, and that I just had a zipper in my stash, and not a brown one, it's cream colored, but I just put it in there and it did the trick. I'm able to get it on and off very easily, so that worked. There's a slit in the left side that goes way up, which I do not like, so I shortened that slip down below the top of my knee-high stockings so that that wouldn't show when I walk. So anyway, I will show you the video here, and I do show you a close-up of the zipper that I put in the side. All right, so plans for the upcoming week and weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this in the knit and begin to sew it. Hopefully it won't take me too long to do that, since I've already got a feel for how that's going to go. The other thing that I plan to do is we have a Bible conference camp coming up in early October, and they have an indoor pool, and I haven't had a new swimsuit in, oh my goodness, it's been a long time. So what I'm going to do, I've been on the search for a modest bathing suit, and when I say modest, I mean like uber modest. Like burkini. I like to be covered head to toe, even though it'll be segregated, men and women, during the pool use times, but it doesn't matter. I still would rather be covered. So what I'm going to do is go to the craft store and look for patterns, whether it's like in sportswear or swimsuits. Frankenstein, I think that's what it's called when you mishmash them together to make it work for you. Of course, I want sleeves, but short sleeves, not long, and I would prefer a pullover with maybe a cold shoulder type, and then leggings, but with a skirt over it to cover my rear. So anyway, that is in my plans for the next couple of weeks, to track down that pattern and then choose my swimwear material. I have until the first week of October to get that done, so hoping that I'll be able to do that. I have a couple more dresses, which I showed you the patterns in a previous episode for my daughter, and I would like to sew her up a couple more dresses in the coming weeks. So other than that, that's really it for me for sewing. And I mentioned life, possibility of moving, and that will change things drastically for us, at least for a short time window. One of the life things that I was thinking about is, as I was working on this toile and thinking of hashtag Friday Sews and some of the skills that I have picked up since I have been watching these other sewists, I was thinking, when and where did I learn to sew, and why did I not learn some of this stuff already? So just thinking through how I learned to sew. Well, first of all, like my mom, she got a sewing machine the summer after I was in first grade, and she made lots of clothes for me. And I used to watch her and love to watch her sew. And then when I was 8, she allowed me to use her sewing machine, and play, learn to sew straight stitches and, make some mock-up doll clothes, which I never knew how to sew correctly. And my mom mostly worked, not always, but so she didn't really take the time to teach me how to sew. It was just watching her and learning how to cut a pattern and seeing how she put things together that was helpful. Then in 9th grade, I was in home economics, and they taught us how to sew. Really what they taught us was we all got a pattern for the same sundress in our size. We went shopping, picked out the material, and then we had to make the garment ourselves. The teacher helped us. We did our cutting. She taught us about using tracing paper and doing markings. We were using cotton woven material, so we didn't really learn any special skills, just basic easy sew pattern. And that's kind of where I've been stuck for many years. Now, when my husband bought me this 1948 back in year 2000, it came with the instruction book and a 1940s how-to. So I read through that and actually picked up some tips there. That's where I first heard of a French seam. That was a game changer, especially for sewing, children's clothing. But anyway, that was neat. I learned how to properly sew on a button and things like that. But there is still a lot that I do not know. So I recently went to the library and checked out a big book on sewing, and I love it, and I think that I'm going to just order that off of Amazon or wherever for myself just to keep as a reference. And of course I have learned so much from the ladies and gentlemen on hashtag Friday Sews. So anyway, just thought I would talk about that briefly, and maybe you can tell me, where did you learn to sew? Did you learn to sew professionally early on? Oh, and by the way, I worked in a sewing factory right out of high school. Most of the women in the community where I grew up, my mother worked there, my grandmother worked there. When the family was in need of extra income, the women went to work at the sewing factory. So I did that too for about a year, year and a half. But you have one job usually, and mine was stitching the fly on pants. Just that, pick up a bundle of pants that has 50 garments in it, pick it up, sew the curve of the fly, put it on the other side, and do that all day. I had to sew over 1,000 pieces every day. So that was a little boring, but I bought a car and paid a few bills, and I learned that I did not want to work in a sewing factory. All right, well, enough of that. Thank you for tuning in today. Maybe say in the comments below where you learned to sew, and do you feel like you're still learning, or have you arrived? All right, till next week, happy sewing.